got to give the people what they want. Welcome, everybody, Buffalo and Atlanta, Georgia, and every spot in between, and whether you're on the West Coast, Canada, we've got people now listening all over, and I want to welcome you to another edition of Power to the People. I've got my new mic. I'm so excited about my new mic today. I really just needed this little broke thing here because we were like hanging on with a rubber band. It looked real Edo, if you know what I mean. Welcome, Jennifer Hope, Marie Collins, who's already online, Lakeisha Benning, who's already online, Veronica Bell, who's already online. Welcome to the show. And those of you who don't click all the way in, but you watch it anyway, and those of you who listen from your car, listen, a lot going on today. The governor of the great state of New York, and I learned we're going to learn some stuff today about this budget that has been delayed. Why it's delayed? I know that the thing about New York, I didn't know this until I was talking to Senator April Baskin. I didn't realize they don't get paid when the budget is delayed.
No.
Hey, that's all right.
Yep.
Because I think the federal government. And I hate that nobody's being paid, but at the end of the day, the federal government, they hold up stuff and they still get on their jets and they still, go to their mansions. And at the end of the day, I think if you're going to hold up everybody else's pay, hold up your own. And they're not even, the state is different than what the federal government is doing because state isn't even holding up people's pay.
Nope.
They're still paying people, but the elected officials don't get paid. I did not know that. So big ups to those who are working in Albany on our budget. You're going to hear a little later from the governor before the end of the show. We'll be talking with the governor in just a little while, so let somebody know that the governor of the state of New York will be on. It is, of course, the day after the 514 observances across the city of Buffalo. Those of you in Atlanta may not know, but 5/14/2022, a white supremacist came through Buffalo, went to a grocery store, opened fire about 2:30 p.m., and he left 10 people unalived, and he left others wounded by his shots, and he left some physically wounded, some mentally wounded, emotionally wounded, all kinds of wounds that we are still dealing with it in our community. So we opened up the show, first of all, to give respect to the families and to others who may not have lost their lives, but for some who lost hope in humanity. And so we are still working through that process. But thank you to all who were here, all who participated. Like anything, I did a live yesterday talking about working together, and I know people get tired of me talking about it, but it's just part of my mission. I do not count myself on the likes of any of our great forefathers, but they had a mission,
yes,
and they stuck to their mission. Malcolm had a mission. Martin had a mission. Shirley Chisholm had a mission. I can go on and on.
Yep.
They stuck to their mission, and one of my missions is to keep pushing for us to somehow continue to work together. But we've got some quite interesting information because we're on in the North and in the South. I asked the question of, are people in the North more unified or less unified than people in the South? So we've got two main radio audiences in Buffalo in the North and in Atlanta in the South. And I just want to read for you, and I looked for scholarly answers and then kind of brought them down to a level that could be understood by a wide range audience. Many historians note that Southern black communities developed powerful, tight-knit institutions, especially the black church. And because they were living under open legal segregation and extreme violence. Now, we're talking about the South. So the South, and that's why the church in the South is still one of the strongest institutions in the black community. Buffalo is the second largest community city in the state of New York, but we don't have mega African-American churches. We have some larger ones, but they're not mega on the sense of that they're seating 5,000 and 6,000 people on a Sunday.
Right.
That's not abnormal in the South. In Buffalo, I would assume that the chapel is the largest place, and that's not a predominantly African-American congregation. But I would assume that possibly, besides, there are some large Roman Catholic churches. That I would say the chapel and Wesleyan, a few other churches, and some that I probably don't know about. But at the end of the day, when you talk about the South, it's nothing to go into Atlanta. It's come to Atlanta. It's nothing to go into Charlotte. It's nothing to go into some of these other places where you have churches that will seat 4,000 and 5,000 people.
Yeah, and in some of those locale, that's actually like a medium-sized church. So they're building their sanctuaries. Mostly is like you said, for them, large is 10 to 15,000.
Right.
For us, that'd be like an arena up here.
Right.
So
exactly.
So it does change.
So the 20,000 seat. Well, I don't want to throw numbers out there. 10,000 seat isn't the average, definitely.
Right. No.
But we don't have one in this area, and in many areas of the North. So even if we go over to New York City, A.R. Bernard Sanctuary is probably one of the larger African-American church, predominantly African-American churches. In the South, the pressure helped produce very visible organized unity in the civil rights era through groups like NAACP, SCLC, SNCC, and other organizations. Now, we know that in Buffalo that there is a link to NAACP in its start. But in northern cities, to get to the topic, black communities also built strong networks. Now, hear me now, and I've said this, so now to see the research, so they built mutual aid societies, churches, schools, but not in the sense of the South that built colleges.
Right.
We were in segregation, but they built colleges because they had open segregation.
Right.
We didn't have the open segregation like they had in the South. So you could still basically go to a college, but you had to get accepted. So there was a barrier.
Yeah, because I was getting ready to say, I think the most northern HBCU is the ones in Baltimore, Maryland, Eastern Shore, things like that.
So there's none up here where they were concentrating on the South. But here's the point that I found in the research. Mutual aid, churches, schools, unions, and civil rights organizations. But according to the research, they were fighting a more hidden or de facto segregation. Redlining, job discrimination, housing covenants, keep you out of certain areas.
Yep.
And that was included in public housing.
Yep.
Up until not too long ago. It wasn't written, but it was proven when I went to the council that there was some public housing that if you went to public housing, they were steering black people into certain places.
To certain areas.
Steering, and that's including Jasper Parish.
Yep.
Perry Projects, Langfield, all of those, they were steering, and I'm not talking about this administration now, I'm talking about before we were in office, steering people into certain neighborhoods. So when you look at the North and you look at the South, their unity was based around a in-your-face segregation that caused them to work together, where ours, if you ask people about redlining, many of them didn't even know that the reason they didn't get a home loan in a certain area was because of redlining.
No.
So there's a different cohesiveness. Even to this day. You come to Atlanta, and I remember, and this is the truth, Monique and I were in Atlanta in a restaurant window. I think I've told this before. And women were walking past complimenting something she had on. And it was mind-boggling because sometime around here, that doesn't happen. And she said, this is what they do. Is that there is this more, if you're doing well, to be able to say it, or if you're African-American business, I'm going to try you and I'm going to try to help improve you. Where up here, I'm just going to talk about some things I've been reading lately that have been disappointing. What's your thought?
I would say, I think some of the, and this is, generalization, because I think some of it is because we really don't know sometimes what Black success looks like, and those that are successful, then because if someone came up from a lower state and immediately took off success, they're confused by why they don't have the support of people who look like them in the North. And they're like, well, I thought this is what we do. We come here and we collaborate.
Yeah.
So they get confused. And I think because, like you said, it's a more hidden segregation or racial issues in the North, because you might have somebody that's like, oh, no, well, and again, if we talk about this article, we end up with this, well, we helped a few. We helped a few people of color. Isn't that good enough? And and then so those people tend to be like, oh, I'm doing better, I'm successful, and not saying, well, I'm gonna stay in the fight. They just end up saying, well, me and my family are successful, me and my network are successful, but we haven't impacted the bigger area or community.
Absolutely. Christopher K. Hudson on Facebook says a lot of HBCUs are actually named, listen to this, after white Northerners that worked in the Freedmen's Bureau, and Fisk was from Genesee County, for instance. Also, Cheney State outside of Philly.
I forgot about Cheney.
Was the first HBC. Yep, he brought it up. I forget about that, too.
Yeah.
Lincoln in Pennsylvania, which I've spoken at. Lincoln in Missouri, and Central State are other northern HBCUs. Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate Christopher.
Yeah, because I forgot about those two in Pennsylvania. Yep.
India says A.D. Price was a development that the Urban League fought to be integrated. It should be said. And that is true. And A.D. Price is a big deal. When I first got elected, it's still not done. And I do think that it should be saved. I just think that you can't go back to the old ways of how you built housing projects. And I don't mean that in the way we say projects, housing developments. And so Bruce Burton, Reverend Bruce, I'm so excited when my brothers and sisters excel and do better than me. Exactly. Okay, here's another part of this talk, of this research. Writers who compare Black life North and South say Southern Black communities can feel more relational and church-centered with a strong respect for elders and family, but also more socially conservative. Northern Black communities, on the other hand, are often described as more politically radical or Afrocentric in certain pockets, but also more fragmented by class and neighborhood lines, especially in big cities shaped by gentrification and economic inequality. You agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like I said, I think we end up in cliques and groups and pockets, and like I said, we end up in this, I got mine, you figure out how to get yours, where I think like the research is saying down south, it is well, I got this piece, but let me figure out how you can get this piece so we can get the bigger piece all together.
Yeah, and I wanted to have this conversation and not have it just on we need to work together, but to really throw out some real history out here of why. And I've been saying for years, I just said this the other day in a setting, that you got to realize Black people came to the North for jobs.
Yes.
Not for unity.
No.
They came for money.
Yes.
And so we are a strong union area to this day.
Absolutely.
Because that was important. That, listen, I done came from the South where I was already treated bad. I need some cover.
Yes.
You go to the South and the unions are not as big of a deal. They'll let you go in the South for blowing your nose the wrong way.
Right.
And there's not a whole lot of union protections in certain fields, where here, hospitals, unions, police, unions, over and over is union. I just saw in Georgia where a whole police department was let go.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, the entire police department was let go by the mayor because of a dispute with the mayor's wife. So the mayor's wife was on payroll to do something, and I think handle payroll. So the mayor just said, I'm disbanding the entire police department.
All of you gone.
All of you. Now, A court decision made them pull it, or not a court. I think council made them, overrode it.
Yep.
But for 2 days or a day or two, they had no police.
That's crazy.
They had to depend on the sheriff.
That's crazy.
So in the North, now I understand why we are more activist oriented, more labor oriented, and in the South. And I said this to a friend of mine. One of our friends was here from Atlanta, and she said, "Well, I'm probably not coming to church Sunday because our friend is here from Atlanta." I said, "That's the problem here. Here we will not go to church for anything. In the South, you visit somebody in the South who is serious about going to church,
hook or crook, they
going, and you can go, or I'm going to leave these grits and chicken on the stove and for you, and you can get and the biscuits for you." Mm-hmm. But that is because of our history and folks that we don't understand. So let's fast forward, because I know I'm running out of time and I got to get to Governor. Let's fast forward to Tops in Buffalo. So I saw a lot on social media, and just for the record, I ain't getting in no fight with nobody. Y'all want to quote whatever I say, go ahead. But I want to start this off by saying I'm at a place in my life. I just want peace. I just want unity for our people. I want progress for our people. And that's where I'm at. And it's other people who have been called to do the other stuff but at this season in my life, only reason I'm mentioning this because I want us to see the value of working together.
Right.
White supremacist comes to Buffalo to destroy us.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing he didn't do was destroy us. But the one thing we have to be careful that he does not do is divide us.
Yes.
Now, listen, folks. Everybody has a right to their opinion.
Yes.
Everybody has a right to their thoughts. That's why there are certain posts I don't comment on, because at the end of the day, that's your opinion. I don't have to agree with it.
Mm-mm.
But I think what makes it more dangerous is not you just take an issue with it, but when you are going to try to shut down and stop any progress because you don't agree. Go ahead.
I was getting ready to say it's absolutely true. And, we talked about it last week and last year. Everyone grieves differently. So if one person or one group wants to have a block party, don't go to the block party. Go with the more somber event. Or if there's not an event for you, plan one of your own and figure out how to get in where you fit in. Like, I think we get so lost in the personalities and who's out front that we do get divided by the actual mission and the actual cause of why we're even on Tops on May 14th.
Yeah.
And that's the issue, but we get lost in all the other minutia, and like you said, we end up accomplishing one of his goals.
One of his goals. Because if I can't destroy him, I'll divide him.
Yep.
You had an article that you found, and we probably need to spend a show on this article. So if you tease it, maybe we can come back and spend the next show.
So, I saw a lot of posts yesterday, and we talked about how we weren't going to be around on Jefferson because we lived it for we lived one day for 3 weeks almost.
Yeah.
So, but looking at all the posts, and the only way I could kind of get it off my mind was to do research. So about Jefferson, because I saw interviews and people and posts of 4 years later, Jefferson still looks the same. Well, it doesn't, because there's a whole streetscape project, but Jefferson still looks the same. So it just made me think of how Jefferson got the way it was. So I started looking up the 1967 race riots here in Buffalo, which was a part of the whole nationwide race riots that were breaking out. And I came across this article in the New York Times, and it's entitled, "Buffalo, Nothing's Changed Since Riot. City leaders' motives are sincere." And just because, remember, this is from 1967.
Yes.
But Negroes insist on more action. And in it just, it opens up, kind of laying out the land. Like I said, this would have been almost 3 months since the riots that were at the end of June in 1967. And it says, it talks about how Jefferson and Williams still look boarded up.
It's in this article. Folks, I'm looking at the article from 1967 in the New York Times.
Yes.
Keep going.
So it talks about the boarded up in the East Side ghetto, and now that the tear gas is dissipated and the echoes of shotgun blasts, and it talks about how many arrests there were and the amount of property damage there was. And I'm scrolling paragraph by paragraph. It quotes the current president, with that time the board chairman of M&T Bank, and how he thought, who was sitting in his $15 million building, and how he talks about, oh, I employed a few Negroes. And so you get a picture of what Buffalo looked like in 1967. As we comb through it, it starts talking about the mayor, and there's a specific part that I read to you before the show. It says, a few months ago, before the riots, the Negroes on Laurel Street got together and cleaned up
the Negroes.
But
that's what they were called.
Right. They cleaned up their seedy, littered block, putting all the trash into neat piles. Then they asked Mayor Frank A. Sedita, a hardworking public servant, we didn't write that, that's in the article, to send over sanitation crews to pick up the trash, sweep the street, and prune dead branches off the trees. The mayor complied promptly. The street was made spick and span for the first time in years. The Block Association sent him a letter thanking him profusely. Now, whenever a visitor to his office inquires about the city's racial problems, the mayor whips out the letter and proudly reads it aloud.
Now, listen to this, folks. Read.
At the same time, he has complained privately that the Laurel Street people annoyed him with their problems.
Now, wait a minute, because I've got India online. I want to read that again. At the same time, the mayor who helped him privately complained that they annoyed him. So sometime annoyance, and just being in the face and saying we need help. So the first clean sweep wasn't in the Brown administration.
No, it wasn't.
Sedita did that. Go ahead.
And so it talks about how he proudly promoted this letter. And then it goes into immediately after that. It says, at the height of the riot, the mayor went into the ghetto. And this is from, again, reporters in New York City. The mayor went into the ghetto and at a tense meeting with a gathering of Negroes, promised to try to find between 3,000 to 3,500 jobs for Negro use. The Chamber of Commerce agreed to oversee the effort. But local industries offered only about 400 jobs through the chamber.
So I know we can go on and on in the article, but let's get to the opinion. At the end of the day, Sedita, in one of the parts of the article, it said they asked, do you have enemies on Laurel Street? And he goes, no, they love me. I've got a letter from them. Yeah. I can show it to you. Saying thank you for city services that I pay for, number one, does not mean that we love you, that you're doing your job. Well, then, as Ms. Elaine, doesn't that say anything to you? So at the end of the day, this isn't the first time we've lived this, but there is all of this talk out there now about what's right for Jefferson, what's not. And all I'm saying, let me get to the point. Let's not lose everything based on having differences of opinion.
Right.
I know there's questions about where is the 90 million. I heard somebody wrote, where's the 1 billion? Folks, I want y'all to count. It's not 1 billion, but 90 million is still a lot of money. And that money should be accounted for. I'm 100% in. That money should be accounted for, and it should be a very transparent process. All I'm saying is my first meeting as a council member when I got on council was for the 33. Not one person was coming out against it. Millions of dollars based on what the community said they wanted, and then division. I'm not getting on either side. I'm here for peace.
Billions, too.
$20 million, Johnny B. Wiley. I see a post, oh, this is trash. Why are they doing this? Well, don't blame, I'm going to be honest, don't blame the government. At the end of the day, there's a board at Johnny B. Wiley. There was community input of what was wanted.
Absolutely.
This is not, matter of fact, I remember pushing for go back to what Johnny B. Wiley board said they wanted.
Right.
Some of those things changed because the times changed.
Yes.
And the one thing that I kept hearing people say, we don't want, now people saying, you're doing it because of gentrification. No, when I first got there 12 years ago, I was pushing for this. And we just got the money through the COVID funds.
Right.
But they said they didn't want just basketball and football. They wanted our people's minds to expand.
Right.
So I think they're putting I don't even remember what's going on.
I don't remember.
A baseball diamond, and somebody complained, why we need a baseball diamond? That's for the new people coming in. Folks, I'm just going to say this. I'm going to say this. New people don't come in if old people don't move out. Can I say this one more time? New people can't come in where the old people who have been there or the generational people don't move out.
Yep.
But if you move out and your families move out and groups move out and they move out of town, those are open real estate. The government cannot say we are reserving these private homes just for people who have lived here. There is a brand new house going up in the Fruit Belt right now. By the way, the streets over there are horrible in the Fruit Belt, and that's not I think that's one of the utilities or something coming down Mulberry. I'm tired of going around and around and around here, but that's a whole nother story. At the end of the day, if you don't want anybody to move in and enjoy the new Wiley Center, don't move out.
That's it.
It's that simple. Don't sell your house.
Don't sell your family's corner store. Don't sell your storefronts. Figure out a way, come together, find some partners, and figure out how can we bring the services back to not only Jefferson, but William and Broadway and Fillmore and all of these stretches that run through our neighborhood. And again, and further into that article from the New York Times, it basically talked about that after those riots, a lot of businesses didn't come back and they stayed boarded up for years. And it actually mentions the Bison's Left War Memorial.
It's in this article.
It's in the article.
I want everybody, hold on. Everybody hear this. I couldn't believe it. Read it. Say it.
That the Bison's Left War Memorial because of these riots. So not saying that the reason for rioting was wrong, but this was and again, as I'm reading it, I had never understood the mind of any riot in any major city. Why do we tear up our own community and then expect government to come rebuild it? If you're going to tear it, if you're going to fight and riot, go to their community.
I ain't saying that. No, that's what
I'm just saying. Like,
let's be clear.
If you want to take that avenue, why tear up the place you live?
Right.
That's what I'm.
Be effective in other communities. Don't go tear it up. Leona Harper says, "I remember the riots. They were horrible. Jefferson had everything on it before that." So these are people. Now I don't remember it. I was 3. She remembers it. India is on it today. She says people keep telling me they want you back on the council, but let the church. Absolutely. Marie Collins, the new people can't come in if old people don't move out, and that's just facts, folks.
It is.
But at the end of the day, so this is my opinion.
Yep.
And I want to be clear. So I know that there has been an announcement about the new center for the memorial or the of 514.
Yep.
This is all my opinion. I have been to Israel and walked through the Holocaust Museum. It was not festive. It was not fun. It was jarring to see things like the shoes of people who were killed in the Holocaust. They're doing the Pulse nightclub in Orlando right now, a memorial. They're putting in chandeliers from the Pulse. And some people, why would you put So there's division. But at the end of the day, if I didn't understand the Holocaust before, when I walked in that building, it was jarring enough to me to go, this really happened and this shouldn't have happened. Whatever is in that memorial should say, this really happened, and this should never happen again. Now, about the observances, I know there was a lot of controversy about that, what should have happened. I just go back to whenever you mention the Holocaust, it is very somber. It is almost a holy moment. It is reflection of the many lives that were lost. And so I think whenever we talk about Middle Passage, I think whenever we talk about Tops, that there should be an almost, and this is, folks, whether you like the decisions I make, my mental means a lot to me too. I knew that I couldn't take a lot of stuff yesterday.
Yeah.
And so it was better for me to just be quiet and thank God for all of those who are at a space who could do it, and thank you for that. But at the end of the day, arguing over, I think if I have an opinion, let me submit it to the people who are putting this together, and let us work together. And everything that I feel is not going to happen, and everything that everybody else feels. But it doesn't mean we have to tear each other down.
And it doesn't mean it all has to happen on 5/14. Make it a full week of remembrance. Do a whole celebration. Just like Juneteenth. Juneteenth just isn't 2 days. They start things the Friday before, and then next thing you know, there's all kind of things leading up until the weekend. So we don't have to all cram everything into one day and then be fighting over, well, I want to be on Laurel. I want to be at what just stretch it out. Like everyone gets a piece.
Yeah, and I think, so I know a lot of people took yesterday as a day of service, and we take King's Day as a day of service. I'm being honest. I'm not going to do a day of service every time it is a black issue. Every time it's African American, so we got to do service. When no other holiday is there a day of service, we did enough service. My grandmother, great grandmother, they did enough service for a lifetime.
We built this country. Now on our days of remembrance, we got to work more.
I got to go paint. No, and that's Darius Pridgen. At the end of the day, I want it to be a day of reflection. I want it to be a day of teaching my children the history. I want them to know. I want to be able to go when this center is built and walk them through, and I want them to be as jarred by it. I don't want it to be soft. I want it to be in your face what white supremacy looks like. And if that's not going to be there, unfortunately, I've said it, and I will say it in whatever community meetings they have or wherever I'm able to contribute. But even if it doesn't happen like that, I'm not going to tear down the efforts of the people who are trying to do it. I do believe that there should be accountability.
Yes.
I do believe, and we got to get to the governor.
Yes.
We got to get to the governor.
Yes, we do.
I got to switch gears, all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you see where I'm at. I wasn't able to get to it all, but I got to enough of it. We got to pay the bills. We'll come back after we've talked to the governor. But after this commercial break, we're going to change up this room as quickly as possible, and you will hear. Now, I won't be able to see the comments like during the talk because I need to talk to the governor. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
When it comes to something as personal as your clothes, you need to deal with somebody you can trust. That's why so many people turn to Hobson's Dry Cleaning, conveniently located in the heart of the community at 874 East Delavan at the corner of Wyoming.
When you take your clothes to Hobson's, you can trust that they'll be ready on time.
You can trust that your whites will be white.
You can trust that you'll always get a fair price and service with a smile.
You can even trust that you won't have to get out of your car if you don't want to. Hobson's has a drive-through window for your convenience.
Trust is what it's all about at Hobson's Dry Cleaning.
Hobson's Dry Cleaning, your one-stop dry cleaners serving the community for over 30 years at 874 East Delavan at the corner of Wyoming. Call 891-8298. That's 891-8298.
And we are back. Thank you to our sponsors who keep us on the air here in Buffalo and in Atlanta, Georgia, and all over our platforms. Listen, I don't have a lot of time to talk because I have a special guest. You saw it teased in the last hour on our social media platform. I am again privileged to have in studio the governor of the greatest state in the United States of America, the governor of the state of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul. Thanks for being with us again.
It's always great to be with you, Bishop Pridgen, and come back and see my friends at True Bethel. It's a regular stop every time I have a chance to come back to my hometown.
Yeah, and you do that constantly. Now, we know that this week has been a special week, and I heard your words at the Tops Memorial. For those of you in Atlanta, Tops is a supermarket here that a few years ago that there was a massacre of 10 African-American people, and others were hurt and wounded by white supremacists in the state of New York. But you came right away, even during the tragedy, and you were here again this week.
Just as you were. You and I were shoulder to shoulder trying to comprehend the scale of what happened, why it happened, but also, most importantly, to try to comfort a community that was literally in shock. And these were our neighbors. These were our friends. And the stories of the individuals we lost are painful to even recall 4 years later, an incredible loss to their families and all of us. And what I did in the aftermath then, as you know, I came up with some of the toughest gun laws in the nation. And this year in my budget, I'm adding even more to them, making sure that we can enhance and make sure we're protected, that people do not get these weapons of mass destruction in their hands because of the lessons we learned on that day. And I was proud to come back here and stand with my community and hug them and grieve with them and let them know I'm not going anywhere, and made some more contributions to a memorial, building a beautiful park here on the east side of Buffalo to commemorate their lives.
Well, speaking of, we know that the shooting, there was a large weapon, but what I am seeing now in the press and all over is about even smaller weapons being made in homes with 3D printers. So we know about the larger ones, but what are we doing, or are we doing anything in the state about the 3D printer guns?
Yes. When we started seeing a spike in cases involving these literally manufactured at your kitchen table. I mean, your home can be a munitions factory. And what we have is the ability for people to create something that is unregistered. There's no background checks. They're absolutely illegal. We ban them, but people are still doing it. So what I'm doing, first time in the nation, we're banning the ability to sell the printers in this state that have not had a disabling device to prevent that. So we're putting it on the manufacturers of the 3D printers. And that's how we're going to get to it.
So for those who may be listening, 3D printers, you put in image and specifications in a computer in the same way that it would print on paper. It creates an object. So it can actually create the casings of a weapon that can be fired. Is that correct?
That's right. But also there's a little plastic device, just the size of a thimble, that you can create with the 3D printer that can take an ordinary gun, put that little piece of plastic in there, and it has the capacity to do 1,200 rounds. So you've now turned
At one time?
At one time, a handgun can be converted into this lethal weapon of mass destruction, the kind you'd see perhaps on a battlefield.
Didn't know that.
So that's also that little plastic device. Why we want to ban the capability to have that as well. So we have really tough laws. My budget, as soon as I get that signed very soon, is going to have nation-leading laws to protect us against one more way that the criminals are trying to thwart our laws. And we're getting ahead of them in this way.
So no other state, has done this, not even federally. Federally.
Not under this administration.
Yeah, a whole different discussion. But the state of New York, for those who are listening and those who are watching, will be the first state in the United States to ban this.
They have our yes, indeed.
So what happens if someone goes over to Pennsylvania and then brings it over here to New York State?
It's illegal to use it in the state of New York.
So it'd be illegal regardless if you get it from the South, regardless of if you get it in the North. At the end of the day, you bring that into New York State, and there are penalties there.
That's right. I have to do everything I can in my power to protect the people of my communities. And we saw what happened when we had laws against machine guns, but we didn't ban that. Someone could literally go across the border into Pennsylvania, as the white supremacists did, and purchase a bump stock, which allows him to add more capacity to it. Now it's not even that hard. With these 3D printers, you can do that in your kitchen. You don't have to go to Pennsylvania. So that's what I'm getting at. And a lot of it was my thought process around what happened here in Buffalo.
Yeah.
To make sure I can do anything I can to spare my beloved community from having to endure such horrific pain.
Well, I think that's so important because we hear about the money. We hear about the money that is coming in, more money coming in. But at the end of the day, it has to be more than just money. There has to be sound legislation that helps to protect people. And we know that you are in the almost probably at the end of the budget sooner or later. It has been extended. Can you update us on where the budget is, or whatever you want to share with us on the budget? But I do have something special to ask you about the budget that I am rather excited about.
Okay. Well, the budget process is lengthy, and I negotiate with the two leaders of the Assembly and the Senate. And Crystal Peoples-Stokes is an important player in this, our hometown girl.
Yes.
A dear friend of mine for many years. She's a majority leader, a very important position in our state legislature. So I come out with my priorities. One is I'm focused on affordability, how I can reduce the cost of living for struggling families. We have more investments this year in this budget for childcare to literally have universal childcare, early childhood education for 3 and 4-year-olds, childcare for infants to 2-year-olds, and I'm going to get that done. It's expensive. It's a huge commitment, but I believe that families should not have to bear the burden of $20,000 extra, $40,000, whatever it is, to have childcare, so they can go to their jobs. I don't want any restrictions, any barriers on why someone who wants to work, take care of the rest of their family, has to stay home like I did. I had to give up a job I loved a long time ago because I had 2 babies, no one to watch them, couldn't afford childcare in the area, and I had to walk away from that job. So that's something I experienced a long time ago. Now those babies are having their own babies and experiencing the same. So this is nation leading in terms of our investment in childcare. So that's job number 1. I got that done. Also, making sure that we can put more money back in those pockets to deal with utility bills. We're going to put $1 billion out there and help families reduce the cost of their utility bills. Also holding insurance companies accountable and the
the insurance. So, the state of New York has some of the, as you have said, some of the highest insurance rates in the nation. And you are really, I had on this jacket the last time we were together when you were talking about this. I wore it on purpose because I was every time I see this thing, I think about my insurance rates and others. So when you're talking about affordability in the state of New York, we know that it's hard to keep a job if you can't deal with childcare. But the insurance rates are astronomical. Tell us in layman's terms what you're doing about that and why.
We have some of the, I think, possibly the highest insurance rates for automobiles in the nation.
Wow.
As you know, I used to run the DMVs.
Yes, you did.
So nobody could register a car without proving they had auto insurance. So it's not an option. You have to have it. And what has happened is that we have people staging crashes, defrauding the system, running up the costs that are being passed on to the rest of it. It is out of control. We have the highest rate in the nation of people. Literally, someone intentionally slams on their brakes in front of you. You hit them, or they may be drunk driving, going through a red light, hitting somebody, causing injuries, but they also feign injury to themselves. The insurance companies and everybody's paying out for this and spreading the cost among the rest of us. We also have liability laws where those people can have a huge jackpot payout from a jury that is sympathetic based on the laws we have. So I'm changing those liability laws, restraining those. I'm having higher penalties for people who are defrauding the system and these scams. And literally there's scams where someone intentionally causes an accident, goes to a doctor who's also on the take and will say that, oh my gosh, that's going to cost $50,000 of injuries. It might be a broken arm, right? So and then they sometimes send them to medical centers that are also on the take. So there's a massive scam going on here. Not everywhere.
Right.
It's not that common, but when it happens, insurance companies look at their costs and say, it's more expensive for all these reasons I've just mentioned, more expensive to issue policies in New York than elsewhere. Now, I want to also go after them. I want to make sure that they're looking at, we're stopping them from being able to look at your zip code when they're trying to determine what your insurance
are preaching. Yes.
Not your zip code, not your job, not your education level. I'm wiping all of those out.
So regardless of what your zip code, because I remember moving from one zip code to another, my insurance rates almost doubled solely based on not on my driving record, but on my zip code. That will be gone if this budget passes?
When I get this budget passed, it'll take some time to get it implemented. There's always regulations and all, but ultimately we'll get this done. The state of Florida is usually not my model for good governance, right? I'm not a fan of the governor or anything they do down there. But that being said, this whole package of reforms I just worked and overcame enormous opposition in the legislature. I mean, this was dead on arrival a few months ago. No one wanted to touch it because there's so many sacred cows, right? You don't touch the trial lawyers. You don't touch the insurance. You don't, except I'm from Buffalo. You know me. I like a good fight. So tell me it can't be done, and I'm going to do it. So we literally accomplished this. And so what Florida did, same reforms, the insurance rates after the first year went down about 7%, then the next year about 8%. I mean, at some point they're starting to give some rebates back to people. So So what I can promise is you won't see that escalation in costs.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's going to stabilize and even start coming down.
Are the insurance companies on board with this, or is that one of the mountains you had to climb?
No, they don't like me telling them what they can use for their rate determination, as I just did. We took out all those factors they were using. So they're not thrilled about that. And we're also looking at excess profits of insurance company executives, right? So you got to look at all these things. So I'm looking at that side. So, but they're happy about the reforms, and they know my full expectation is that the rates will stop escalating and at some point start coming down.
So we need a break in this area. As you know, we deal with a lot of poverty, housing. You have talked about seeker and all that. I want you to tell the folks, if you will, Governor, what you're working on to bring even more affordable housing into this area, the state of New York.
It is such a crisis for the entire state of New York, but I see it here in my hometown, and I want to see more affordable housing projects being built by churches, built by communities, built by private investors, because we can drive down the cost of rent if we can build more supply.
Yeah.
I've seen that in other communities. But for a long time, there's all these barriers. NIMBYs, people don't want a project to happen in their neighborhood. They don't want to bring in people that might not look like them.
So for those who are watching don't know NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Not in my
which
backyard.
is like build it anywhere else, but don't build it here.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And that's been paralyzing in Buffalo and elsewhere. They've also relied on something called SEEKR, which is a state environmental review law put into place in 1975 when it was needed.
Yes.
But since then, we've had other environmental laws that have superseded it, but people still have to follow SEEKR, and it can add 2 years to a project and really dramatically increase the cost per unit. I don't know the numbers for Buffalo, but New York City, a housing project, the cost is an additional $82,000 per unit to comply with state laws. Per unit.
Which is going to get passed on then to the renter or to whoever eventually is there.
That's exactly right. So another huge battle I took on. Nobody wanted me to touch this. They said, just leave it alone. I just cannot accept the status quo. I'm always going to say, why does this cost more? Why isn't this happening? What are the barriers? And how do I, as the governor of the greatest state in the nation, as you said, how do I use my power to break them down? And this budget encapsulates all of that, all with the focus on making life more affordable and a better experience for people who call New York home.
Well, our time is almost up. I have to hit on immigration reform because this is big across the country. Just saw reports on it in other states. You're the governor of New York, and you have, as we say, you have stood on business when it comes to immigration reform. Talk to us about that.
Absolutely. If you look in the cover of the New York Times today, cover stories about our refugee in Buffalo here, Mr. Salam, and I met with his family. And everyone knows the story here. Maybe your friends in Atlanta do not know, and you can tell them. But this is a horrific example of the callousness of taking innocent people who are not harming others and countless others who are here living in our communities, and the population of Buffalo would have gone down over years if we didn't have the influx of refugees coming in from all around the world, and many immigrants have found their way here, and they deserve a chance. What I will do is work with the federal government when it comes to getting rid of criminals, right? We do not want the worst of the worst, the baddest of the bad is what President Trump told us he would go after. We'll work with you. My police will always do that. They always have. Nothing changes. But what we have right now, and this is why I call my initiative Local Cops, Local Crimes. I'm really proud that in New York State, crime has dropped dramatically since we've invested over $3 billion here in Buffalo. I announced that homicides and shootings are way down. That's because we have local police working on local crimes. Now, there is something called this 287G agreement, where some counties, including Nassau County, the other end of the state, they have an agreement to do ICE's work for them, right? I'm helping you do your jobs. I will go to the Home Depot and help arrest people for you. I'll pull over people at a traffic stop and call ICE. I'll let them come into our jails. So I'm banning those agreements. I don't think that we should be doing ICE's job for them. It's an $85 billion agency, bigger than our public safety budget in the state of New York. And so I want to make sure that we're focused on what police officers should be doing and not distracted fulfilling Donald Trump's desire to remove anyone who does not look like him.
Well, in Atlanta, I know that there were reports of people parents who were not sending their children to school, even if the child was legal, because of the fear that the child would get caught up in the system of some of these very questionable ICE raids.
I'm sorry to tell you that it's not just Atlanta. It's
Wow.
New York State, New York City. I have heard from parents, elected officials in our state legislature who told me, one woman said, a Hispanic woman says, I'm not letting my 13-year-old son walk out by himself because I'm afraid he's going to be targeted. Now, he's a U.S. citizen, and we saw what happened to U.S. citizens who got in the way of ICE in Minneapolis. They were murdered. So I'm also saying that if ICE overreaches, they do something that violates your constitutional rights, as I believe happened to the family of our refugee here in Buffalo, that they should have a recourse in the courts. ICE should not be able to get away with it. ICE should also not be wearing masks.
Amen.
There's no other law enforcement entity, from FBI to DEA to our local police or state police. Nobody else wears a mask. Why do you need a mask? It's an intimidation tactic. I also have identified sensitive locations where no ICE are allowed unless they have a court order or a warrant for arrest. Churches, places of worship,
Absolutely.
schools, community centers, hospital. I have a whole list, and that's part of the law that I expect to pass in the budget. I'm also adding polling places because I believe that as the Republicans are afraid that they're going to lose the next election, the midterm elections for Congress, they're going to send ICE agents to black and brown communities to intimidate people into not showing up to vote.
That will be in this budget if
Yes.
it passes.
Yes.
When it passes. It's got to pass sooner or later.
Very, very soon.
But that is something that you're holding, that you're standing 10 toes down, that's something that you feel is important to be in this budget.
Absolutely. That's why it's taking longer, because I won't give up on fights. Yeah, I missed the deadline.
You missed the deadline over and over.
Yeah, but you know what I get? I do better in overtime. Okay. I always win in overtime. Not like my Sabres did last night, or the Bills sometimes do.
Well, I'll tell you this: we're in the middle of a big, huge building project here, and it's not at the time that I wanted it to be. And people keep asking me, when is it going to be done? And this is what I told them: if I did not take the time, the devil's in the details, and there were things that we would have missed that would have been important in this sanctuary project. That now I'm grateful that we took the time, and I think that there are going to be people dealing with auto insurance, that there's going to be people dealing with immigration reform, and that there's going to be people, especially developers, who want to develop for the right reasons,
that's right.
not for the right reasons of having affordable housing in the state of New York, who are going to say, bravo, thank you for taking your time. The governor, state of New York. Any last words, Governor?
Thank you, Bishop. Always great to see you.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Brian K. Lewis Funeral Home has 3 locations to serve you in Buffalo: 347 Peckham, 2258 Bailey Avenue, and Providence Memorial Chapel at 1275 Sycamore. Brian K. Lewis Funeral Homes offers traditional services, and they have services for all faiths. And at Brian K. Lewis Funeral Homes, they have air-conditioned parlors and chapels. Financing is available, as is limousine service. At those difficult moments in your life, Brian K. Lewis Funeral Homes is available where you are with counseling services. Call toll-free 877-885-7734. That's 877-885-7734. Or locally 845-5545. Brian K. Lewis Funeral Homes. We are here to serve you, here to serve this present age. Call today, toll-free 877-885-7734. Or email info@brianklewisfuneralhome.com.
And we're back. Thank you, Brian K. Lewis Funeral Home, and thank you to Hobson's, the doctor of dry cleaning. Thank you to the governor. Thank you to everybody here for making everything happen so quickly. That was a lot. The governor, was in and out, and we're glad that she was able to stop through. But let's talk about a few of these things. Number one, auto insurance.
That's the big one for me, because that is the biggest fight I've had since moving to New York. Like, I'm in Delaware, my insurance used to be like maybe $100, $120 a month.
Yeah.
In New York, I've never been under $200 a month.
Well, there's a new law firm moving in here, and they say size matters, and it's the largest. So they're coming in this community to make money, obviously.
Right.
I have nothing to say against them. them for them. I don't know them, but at the end of the day, I care about people local,
Absolutely.
who know me, who know my community, who know whatever. You choose whoever you choose. This is not a commercial for anybody.
No, absolutely not.
But I do think that it is outrageous. I didn't realize that's why we pay more than anybody almost in the United States.
I can believe it.
Because this is ridiculous. I moved from one zip code to another zip code.
Yep.
And as I said when with the governor, and it almost doubled. So we got to get this under control.
Have to. And I'm glad, not only with the auto insurance, I'm glad, she talked about her efforts to stopping ICE and how they're just can run rawshod almost. And I reflected one time when I seen them happen, when I seen them in action, it reminded me of the old police force with slaves. Like, oh, go capture them, and some people said it's just practice for the larger effort, and you just don't know. But it is scary when you see them whip in front of traffic, hop out with all masks on, and start pulling.
And
people
our police shouldn't be helping them. And Sherry Thomas, and I'm sorry I told you I wouldn't be able to comment, but Sherry Thomas and Dr. Gelsey were on here about prison reform and all kinds of stuff. So there was a lot of conversation. Sorry I couldn't get to your comments. So the budget is still delayed.
Yes.
Obviously, it got extended again this week.
Mm-hmm.
I really hope and I suspect within the next week and a half.
No, absolutely.
Because right now they're working out these details.
Absolutely.
But I think bringing down insurance is important.
Mm-hmm.
I think child care is so important for so many families.
Yeah, because so many people, we talk about the benefit cliff, and so many people have to make that hard decision. Right. Do I work or do I stay at home and take care of the kids? And that is a big decision for a lot of families.
Yeah, and if you already are working a job that doesn't pay enough for child care,
right.
At the end of the day, okay, I get it. And it's the same way where Canada does health care.
Yes.
Those things that are important to a community are the things that I think that we have to be looking into. And when we talk about the affordable housing, this isn't a commercial, it's just going over which it seems like a lot of the issues, and I'm sure there are other issues, has to do with income.
Right.
And ensuring that those who want a leg up have an opportunity to live in because we just talked about before the governor came on, we just talked about being in our communities, being able to stay in our communities. But if you can't afford to stay in that community, and I do think that's where government gets involved. Thanks, Sherry, where government gets involved and says, we've got to make regulations so that we can be an affordable New York. But if all we do is pass budgets and there aren't any changes in laws and legislation, or for that matter, jail reform, prison reform, all of that to make life better for people, to make life safer, because these 3D guns, man, like a kid right now,
get a printer,
who has a 3D printer that you can go to Best Buy and get, can if they get the right program, could make a pow.
Yeah, and
at home,
and as she said, I'm thinking the whole plastic gun, which when they started was just the one bullet shooter. Now she talking about they can build the piece that turns.
I never heard it.
It could turn to a fully automatic weapon. It's crazy.
Yeah, I never heard that, and I'm really glad the governor. Thank you, Governor, for stopping in and really sharing with us what's happening. That's live. So that's right here in Buffalo, and thank you to our governor. Listen, I got to get ready to go, folks. If you think your voice doesn't matter, I'm sorry it does. And I'll just end like this. We, as Kamal says, and he even gave a scripture today on social media, working together works. So many people have said it. We don't have to destroy each other, even if we're divided on an issue. Remember, we're all in this together. We're all in the same boat. We sink or swim together. Until next week, power to the people.